Oil, oil, oil. What kind of oil to use? I'm going to try to confine this video to oil choices for alarm clocks, but I also can't help making a few remarks about other clocks and spring-wound devices in general, since I have a lot of that kind of stuff. So let's just keep this simple and start with the alarm clocks first. For the pivots in the train gearing, I like to use something fairly light, like this 3-in-1 oil. That seems to be my general go-to favorite. I'll generally take the oil out of a bottle like this and put it in an old needle oiler bottle like this to make it easier to apply. Although technically a lot of people will do this by putting a few drops of the oil on a toothpick and then touching the toothpick to the places to be oiled, which is also a very good idea. Very similar to this oil, the 3-in-1 oil, is the pole spout oil, which I think is either 10 or 20 weight oil, about the same as the 3-in-1. I tend to use this on electric fans a lot, but this also works on clocks and can be used in place of the 3-in-1 oil. And if truth be known, when this bottle runs out, I don't go and buy another bottle of the pole spout oil. I take the cap off and I go down to the auto parts store and buy either 10 weight or 20 weight non-detergent oil and pour in there and just refill and reuse it. For mainsprings requiring oil and not grease, this is what I use. I've heard a lot of people say Slick 50. Slick 50 is not available in my area anymore, not without special ordering it. But hypoid oil, which is rear differential gear oil, in which there's a lot of sliding action between the teeth occurring, is a very similar kind of situation that you have with mainsprings, where you have the coils of the springs sliding across each other and with some force against each other. And so the additives in this oil are very good for mainsprings. And then what I will do is put that oil in a little bottle such as this, and then use it when installing the mainsprings in a clock. Don't use very much, just a few drops, and then make sure it's evenly distributed about the spring will work real well. Same thing here. This container here, because it's silver, I generally put kerosene in. And I use that for sewing machines and clocks and other things. To oil places or screws or whatever to get things freed up. If the mainspring is in, say, a phonograph or a barreled clock, a larger spring where it's going to be needing grease, I use Lubriplate, and I also use Lubriplate for the gearing in electric fans in the gearboxes. And I like to use this Lubriplate for electric fan gearboxes. It's motor assembly grease, but it works real well in the gearboxes of electric fans, such as this one, for instance. It's got Lubriplate in there, and it's been going strong now for nearly 5 years. This is fairly light-bodied and is good, but for heavier applications, I'm sorry I don't have an original container of it here. I use Lubriplate AA, and you can still get Lubriplate AA from Lubriplate. It's a bit of a heavier bodied grease than the motor assembly grease, and this works really good for spring-wound phonograph motors to put on the gear teeth and to put on the mainsprings. It's very good for mainsprings, especially if you need it a little thinner. You can cut it a little bit with some of the 85W90 gear weight gear oil, and it works really good. And just use it straight to fill in the teeth on the worm drive governor gears. So that's my take on lubrication. Like I said, I like this stuff for mainsprings. That I've tried a lot of different things over the years, from just using oil, using 30-weight motor oil. I've decided that the gear oil seems to give the best results with the mainsprings, and so that's what I'm using. Slick 50 would be great. Doesn't seem like any of the shops in my area carry that anymore, so they say it's special order now. But the gear oil does real well. I really like using the 3-in-1 oil. I use that on clocks, both alarm clocks such as this, and full-size clocks, and on sewing machines and fans. The pulse spout oil, very good on sewing machines and fans. Pretty much the same weight as the 3-in-1 oil, and it would work on clocks just as well. Kerosene is sort of my penetrating oil, unless I actually have to use real penetrating oil. And as always, save old oil bottles for reuse. Even the pulse spout oil bottle, save it for reuse when it gets empty. Fill it up with just generic 10 or 20 weight oil, and you can keep using it. It's a very handy format in which to have oil. So I hope that helps you out with oiling. It's not too complex. Just use oil sparingly. A single drop on each pivot is all that's necessary. And when oiling the escapement, you do this before you you put the clock in motion. This is just a beater movement, so it's dirty. But what I would do is, if this was a clock that I was redoing, I would assemble everything and then test everything by hand, make sure it works. And then I would wind it up, and then I would put a drop of oil on every other tooth of the escape wheel. Is how I would oil the escapement. A single drop on each pivot of the escape wheel. A drop every other tooth of the escape wheel. From what I've read, it's recommended you don't put any oil on the pivots for the lever, because it causes too much drag on a West clock's movement. And then a single drop of oil on each end of the balance, and a drop of oil on the impulse pin of the balance wheel. And of course, you never put any oil on the teeth of the gearing on a clock. And then the mainspring, what I would do would be to wind it up a turn or two from fully down, put a drop or two of oil of the gear oil on the coils, let it soak into the coils, and wind it up all the way. And if you have to, wipe up any excess, but if you are sparing enough with it, it shouldn't make a mess. As always, if you have questions or comments, please leave them. This is Oklahoma Bridges. Thank you for watching.